Long-distance relationships don't fail because of miles. They struggle because of unspoken fears, unmet needs, and nervous systems that don't feel safe in absence. When someone you love is far away, your body doesn't measure love in promises, it measures it in presence. And when presence is inconsistent or uncertain, old attachment wounds can awaken. The anxiety, the overthinking, the sudden insecurity, these aren't signs that you're weak. They are signs that your nervous system is trying to protect you. The real question is not, can love survive distance? The real question is, can two people create emotional safety without physical proximity? Because love isn't sustained by geography, it's sustained by attunement. Distance has a way of amplifying everything. It magnifies silence, it magnifies misunderstandings, it magnifies insecurities you didn't even know were there. When you can't reach for someone's hand, your mind reaches for certainty. And if certainty isn't there, your nervous system begins scanning for danger. A delayed reply feels like rejection. A shorter call feels like withdrawal. The body remembers every past moment where connection felt unstable, and it reacts as if it's happening again. Long-distance relationships don't just test love, they test regulation to make distance work. You must understand that your reactions are not flaws, they are adaptations. If you become anxious, it may be because closeness once felt unpredictable in your life. If your partner withdraws, it may be because vulnerability once felt unsafe for them. Distance exposes attachment patterns, and that exposure is not a curse, it's an invitation. The key is this: physical absence cannot become emotional absence. If distance turns into emotional unavailability, resentment will grow. But if distance is met with intentional presence, with reassurance, clarity, and emotional transparency, then something deeper can form, trust that is not dependent on proximity. Long-distance love demands maturity. It asks, can you express needs without accusation? Can you offer reassurance without feeling controlled? Can you regulate your anxiety instead of making your partner responsible for it? Love across distance is not sustained by grand gestures. It is sustained by small, consistent acts of emotional reliability. Consistency is what calms the nervous system. Clarity is what prevents projection. Emotional honesty is what keeps intimacy alive. And perhaps most importantly, both people must choose the relationship actively. Long distance cannot survive on one person carrying the emotional weight. Mutual effort is not optional, it is oxygen. Distance, when handled consciously, can deepen love. It forces communication. It reveals intentions. It strips away physical distraction and asks, are we connected at the level of truth? If the answer is yes, distance becomes a bridge, not a barrier. Let's talk about some facts that how to make a long-distance relationship work. First thing is, prioritize emotional presence over constant contact. When people are separated by distance, the instinct is often to increase contact. More messages, more calls, more updates. It feels logical. If we cannot be physically close, we will compensate with constant communication. But the nervous system does not measure connection by quantity. It measures it by quality. You can exchange hundreds of messages and still feel alone. You can talk for hours and never truly feel seen. Because emotional presence is not about being available every minute. It is about being attuned in the moments that matter. When someone checks in with you while distracted, multitasking, half listening, your body registers that absence. It may not be conscious, but it is felt. The tone, the pauses, the emotional flatness, these signals communicate more than words. In long-distance relationships, this kind of fragmented contact can quietly increase insecurity rather than soothe it. What truly regulates the nervous system is felt understanding, a meaningful check, and sounds different. It is slower, it has space, it includes curiosity. Instead of, how was your day? Followed by quick replies, it becomes, what felt heavy today? Or, where did you feel most yourself? It allows vulnerability to emerge instead of just logistics. Emotional presence requires attention, and attention is an act of care. When you speak with someone who is genuinely attuned, you feel it in your body. Your breathing softens, your shoulders drop. You feel less alone, not because you spoke for a long time, but because you were received. Many people confuse constant texting with intimacy. But often, constant contact is anxiety trying to self-soothe. It is the part of us that fears disconnection and tries to prevent it through control, checking, monitoring, keeping the line open. This is not wrong, it is protective. It may have roots in earlier experiences, where connection felt unstable. But what heals insecurity is not surveillance, it is safety. Safety is built when both partners show up emotionally regulated, willing to listen, willing to share honestly. Even a short conversation can be deeply nourishing if it includes authenticity. 10 grounded minutes of true presence can calm more than hours of scattered exchange. In distance, this becomes even more important. Because you do not have physical cues, a touch, a glance, shared silence, you must intentionally create emotional depth. You must ask yourself, am I speaking to fill space, or am I speaking to connect? Prioritizing emotional presence also means tolerating space. Healthy love allows breathing room. If you require constant updates to feel secure, it may be an invitation to explore what absence represents inside you. Is it abandonment? Is it loss? Is it unpredictability? When both partners understand their own attachment patterns, they can approach communication consciously instead of reactively. They can say, when I don't hear from you, I notice I feel anxious, instead of accusing or demanding. That honesty creates closeness far more effectively than constant contact ever could. In long-distance relationships, depth replaces proximity. It is not about how often you speak. It is about how fully you show up when you do. Second thing is that establish predictable communication rhythms. When two people are separated by distance, uncertainty can quietly become the third presence in the relationship. You may not speak about it directly, but the body feels it. When will they call? Why haven't they replied? Are they pulling away? The mind begins to create stories in the absence of information, and those stories are rarely generous. They are protective. The nervous system is wired for safety, and one of the primary ingredients of safety is predictability. As children, we learn to relax, not simply because someone loved us, but because we could rely on their presence. We knew when they would return, how they would respond, what to expect. Consistency builds trust at a biological level. In a long-distance relationship, that predictability must be intentional. It does not happen automatically. Without physical proximity, you lose many regulating cues, the familiar rhythm of someone entering a room, the casual good morning, the shared dinner. In their absence, irregular communication can feel like emotional instability, even when no harm is intended. When communication is random or inconsistent, the body interprets it as potential threat. A missed call may trigger a disproportionate reaction. A delayed text can awaken old attachment wounds. It is not immaturity, it is memory. The body remembers times when closeness was unpredictable, and it reacts accordingly. Creating predictable communication rhythms is not about control. It is about co-regulation. When two people agree, for example, that they will speak each evening, or have a long call every Sunday, or send a voice note before bed, they are offering one another nervous system reassurance. They are saying, you do not have to guess where I stand. You do not have to chase connection. It will be here. This reduces anxiety dramatically. The mind no longer needs to scan for danger. The body does not have to brace for loss. There is a rhythm, and rhythm is soothing. Predictability also fosters emotional maturity. It requires reliability. It asks both partners to take responsibility for showing up when they say they will. If plans change, clarity becomes essential. A simple message that says, I won't be able to call at our usual time, but I will call tomorrow morning, prevents unnecessary spirals. It replaces ambiguity with reassurance. Many conflicts in long-distance relationships are not about love, they are about uncertainty. When connection feels erratic, insecurity grows. When communication has rhythm, trust grows. Of course, life cannot be perfectly structured. There will be disruptions, busy days, unexpected events. The goal is not rigidity, it is reliability. Even when schedules shift, the underlying message remains consistent. You matter, I am here. Our connection is stable. Over time, this consistency becomes internalized. You begin to carry the sense of the other person's presence within you. You do not panic when a few hours pass without contact, because your nervous system has learned that the bond is dependable. Distance challenges attachment patterns, but it can also heal them. Predictable communication becomes more than logistics. It becomes a corrective emotional experience. It teaches the body that closeness does not have to be chaotic, that love can be steady. That connection can have a rhythm you can rest into. And when you can rest in the rhythm of someone's reliability, distance loses much of its power to destabilize you. Another important factor is reassure without being asked. Distance doesn't just separate bodies, it separates signals. When two people are close, reassurance happens in 100 quiet ways. A glance across the room, a hand on your back while you're speaking. The casual, "I'm here," that's communicated without words. In long distance, those regulating cues disappear, and what remains is interpretation. And when the nervous system is left to interpret in uncertainty, it often defaults to protection. That's why distance amplifies doubt, not because love is weaker, but because the mind fills in what the heart can't confirm. A delayed reply becomes a question mark. A shorter call becomes a threat. A busy day becomes a story. Maybe I'm not important. Maybe they're losing interest. Maybe I'm being replaced. Most people don't realize this doubt is rarely about the present moment. It's usually about an older memory being reactivated. If someone had to fight for attention in childhood, if affection felt inconsistent, if closeness was followed by withdrawal, then distance becomes a perfect stage for those old patterns to replay. The adult may understand logically that their partner is simply busy, but the body doesn't respond to logic. The body responds to emotional history. Reassurance, then, is not a performance. It is a form of nervous system care, and the most powerful reassurance is the kind that arrives before someone has to beg for it. Because when reassurance is only given after anxiety erupts, it can start to feel transactional, like comfort must be earned through distress. The person learns, unconsciously, I only get closeness when I'm upset. That pattern deepens insecurity rather than healing it. Reassuring without being asked sends a different message. You don't have to chase me. You don't have to prove you deserve my attention. I'm thinking of you because you matter, not because you're panicking. This is what emotional reliability looks like. It doesn't require long speeches. It requires consistency and warmth. A simple "I miss you today." A voice note that says, "I'm proud of you." A message that names commitment plainly. "I'm in this with you." These aren't dramatic lines, they are stabilizing signals. Because in long-distance love, silence is loud. The absence of communication gets interpreted as the absence of care, especially for someone with an anxious attachment system. And for someone with an avoidant pattern, the instinct may be to stay quiet because vulnerability feels risky. But the avoidance that protects one partner often injures the other. So reassurance becomes an act of courage. It asks you to show your feelings without being forced. To say the tender thing before fear makes it complicated. To offer warmth not as a reaction, but as a steady presence. And there's another layer here. Reassurance isn't only for the anxious partner. Even the person who seems fine, maybe holding doubt quietly, not wanting to appear needy. Distance can make even secure people question themselves at times. Reassurance creates a climate where needs don't become shameful, but reassurance must be sincere, not overdone, not manipulative, not empty. If reassurance is used to avoid real conversations, if it becomes a bandage over unresolved issues, it won't land. The nervous system can detect when words are being used to pacify rather than connect. True reassurance is rooted in truth. It matches behavior, it matches effort, it matches consistency, and it also includes transparency. Sometimes reassurance is as simple as explaining your absence. I'm going into a long meeting, but I'll call you tonight. I'm exhausted and quiet today. It's not about us. This kind of clarity protects the relationship from unnecessary storytelling. Distance will always create space. The question is what you put into that space. If you fill it with silence, the mind fills it with fear. If you fill it with steady signals of care, the relationship becomes emotionally close even when physically far. Reassurance without being asked is not about dependency. It's about devotion expressed in a language the nervous system understands: predictability, warmth, and presence. And when love learns to speak that language, doubt has less room to grow. Another important this is address conflict quickly and directly. Distance has a way of intensifying what is left unspoken. When two people are physically together, small ruptures are often softened by proximity. A facial expression, a gentle touch, shared laughter, these can repair minor misunderstandings before they harden. But in long-distance relationships, you do not have those regulating cues. What remains are words, tone, and interpretation. And when conflict is avoided, the silence does not neutralize the tension, it amplifies it. Unresolved tension, it disappears, it settles into the body. You may tell yourself it's nothing. You may decide it's not worth bringing up. You may avoid it because you fear creating distance, but internally something shifts. Your tone becomes slightly colder. Your enthusiasm becomes restrained. You begin protecting yourself subtly. This is how resentment begins, not through explosive arguments, but through accumulated, unaddressed moments. The nervous system is deeply sensitive to disconnection. When conflict occurs and is not repaired, the body registers it as relational instability, especially in long-distance dynamics where connection already requires intentional effort. Unresolved issues can create a quiet but persistent anxiety. Are we okay? Is something wrong? Silence then becomes heavy, and the longer it lingers, the more stories the mind creates. Many people avoid addressing conflict because they associate disagreement with rejection. Perhaps earlier in life, expressing discomfort led to withdrawal, punishment, or shame. So now, even as adults, conflict feels dangerous. It feels like risking the bond, but avoiding conflict does not preserve connection. It erodes it slowly. Addressing conflict quickly and directly does not mean reacting impulsively. It means acknowledging what is happening before it calcifies. It means saying gently and honestly, something didn't sit well with me earlier, instead of letting the discomfort grow into quiet resentment. Direct communication requires emotional regulation. If you approach conflict from a triggered state, the conversation will likely escalate. But if you can pause, reflect, and then speak from your experience rather than accusation, repair becomes possible. Instead of "you don't care," it becomes, "When you canceled our call last minute, I felt unimportant. Can we talk about that?" This kind of vulnerability invites connection rather than defensiveness. In long-distance relationships especially, repair is more important than perfection. There will be misunderstandings. There will be missed cues. What determines the strength of the bond is not the absence of conflict. It is the willingness to return to one another after rupture. When conflict is addressed promptly, the nervous system learns something profound. A disagreement does not mean abandonment. This is deeply healing for people who grew up in environments where conflict led to emotional disconnection. Repair restores safety. It allows both partners to recalibrate. It replaces assumption with clarity. It prevents small injuries from becoming relational narratives. Because once a narrative forms, they don't prioritize me. They always withdraw. I can't express myself. It becomes harder to undo. Distance demands intentional repair. If something feels off, name it before it turns into distance. If you feel hurt, express it before it transforms into indifference. If there has been tension, return to it with openness instead of pride. Quick repair communicates commitment. It says, "This relationship matters more than my ego. Our connection is worth the discomfort of honesty." Silence may feel safer in the moment, but in the long run, silence builds walls. Direct, compassionate communication builds bridges, even across miles. And then last, I would like to remind you that have a shared vision of the future. Distance can be endured for a season. It can even deepen appreciation. But distance without direction slowly erodes emotional security. The human nervous system does not relax into indefinite ambiguity. It needs orientation. It needs to know, where is this going? What are we moving toward? Without that sense of direction, even strong love begins to feel fragile. When two people are separated geographically, the present moment often feels incomplete. There are missed experiences, missed milestones, missed daily rhythms. The bond is sustained not only by current connection, but by the promise of eventual reunion. If that promise is vague or unspoken, uncertainty fills the gap, and uncertainty over time becomes exhausting. Love cannot live indefinitely in uncertainty because uncertainty activates vigilance. The mind starts scanning. Are we serious? Are we temporary? Am I investing in something that has no destination? Even if these questions are not voiced, they influence behavior. One partner may hesitate to fully open. The other may feel anxious and push for clarity. Tension emerges not because of lack of affection, but because of lack of shared vision. A shared vision of the future does not require rigid timelines or perfect plans. Life is complex. Circumstances shift. But what it does require is alignment and intention. It requires both partners to say clearly and sincerely, "I see a future with you." It requires conversations about closing the distance, not as fantasy, but as possibility. It requires exploring practical steps, even if they are long-term. Without these discussions, the relationship can begin to feel suspended, alive, but not grounded. When a relationship has no defined direction, the nervous system cannot fully settle. Commitment feels partial. Effort feels risky. One may unconsciously hold back to protect against potential loss. But when there is a shared vision, something changes internally. The sacrifices feel purposeful, and the waiting feels meaningful. Even difficult days are held within a larger narrative. We are building towards something. This sense of shared direction strengthens resilience. It transforms distance from a barrier into a transitional phase. It becomes something you are navigating together rather than something that is happening to you. Having a shared vision also requires honesty about compatibility. Are both of you willing to relocate, adjust careers, or shift circumstances if needed? Are your long-term values aligned? Love alone cannot sustain a relationship if your visions of life diverge fundamentally. Distance forces these questions to surface sooner, which can actually be a gift. Avoiding future conversations may feel easier in the short term. It protects against disappointment, but avoidance creates silent anxiety. Clarity, even if uncomfortable, creates stability. When two people consciously choose one another, not just emotionally, but practically, love matures. It becomes intentional rather than romanticized. A shared vision is not about fantasy. It is about commitment expressed through direction. Without direction, distance feels endless. With direction, distance becomes temporary. And when both partners can look ahead and say, "We are moving toward each other," love finds the grounding it needs to endure. A long-distance relationship works not because two people endure separation, but because they choose emotional closeness despite it. Distance will surface your wounds. It will challenge your patience. It will ask you to grow. But when two people meet that challenge with awareness instead of blame, with consistency instead of chaos, and with courage instead of fear, love doesn't shrink. It matures, and sometimes love that survives distance becomes the most grounded love of all because it was built not on convenience, but on conscious choice.